My name is Fredrick Bennett, and I'm a automobile mechanic.
And how old were you when the Silver Bridge fell?
I was 3 months and 4 days old.
And do you remember anything?
What I do remember mainly is the stories from my mother and father. We was on the bridge. I was in the backseat of our automobile. We was in Point Pleasant doing Christmas shopping. My parents were at the time, and I'd cross the Silver Bridge to go home. We live in God Bless, and the stories that both my parents, who are deceased now, told me and my siblings that as it was crossing the bridge, the decking of the bridge was raising anywhere from 2 to 6 feet, and it was in a wave type pattern. And of course, they were very distressed at the time, knowing that the bridge was going to collapse, and knowing that they was going to die as well as their youngest child. Luckily, they managed to get off the bridge on the Ohio side, where traffic was stopped. My parents got out of the car with me, and we stood and watched as the bridge collapsed and watched, the poor souls hit the water. My father was one who had went into the water that day, immediately, to try to help. It was sad. He wasn't able to do anything. The wreckage that's still in the bridge, that was in the water, prevented him from doing anything at all, which my father ended up with hypothermia and was placed in the hospital at Holders due to his attempt to try to save anybody from the bridge.
Okay, did you cross the bridge or did your car go down? Like, did you jump out of the car and run to the Ohio side, or did your car and everybody make it to the
The car actually made it across the bridge.
Okay.
There was more than the 47 people on the bridge. There was actually my mother told me that the bridge was completely full, going in both directions whenever the I-beam broke and the bridge decking started raising and lowering. And we were lucky enough for our vehicle to get off. Now, mind you, we was on the off ramp, still on the ramp on the Ohio side, so we could feel the vibration as the bridge collapsed. We were still on part of the bridge itself, but luckily, like I said, it was the off ramp, and the off ramp did not collapse. On either side, it was the center spans that collapsed.
What did you do after? Your father went into the water, I guess, to see who he could help. What happened after that?
Well, whenever my father got out, I know these from the true stories that my mother and father both told me. My father, whenever he came out of the river, was distraught, crying. He was a union boilermaker at the time, and he was in tears where he couldn't help anybody. The Ohio ambulances was already on the scene, and they all actually thought that my father was one who had went into the bridge with the vehicle where he had come out of the water, but he was freezing to death. It was very cold. It was a cold December day, December 15th, which they immediately put him in an ambulance and took him to the hospital where he was treated for hypothermia. My mother took me home, which I just lived 3 miles away from the bridge at the time. My family did, and my father's sister was babysitting us.
On the Ohio side.
On the Ohio side, yes. And of course, whenever we went in, my mother told my Aunt Ruth Ann, what had happened, which she had heard it on the radio. But the eyewitness account of my mom was pretty horrifying. And all throughout my life, up until my mother's passing in 1984, she recounted the story to me a number of times of the people in the water screaming, begging for help, watching people go under the water and not coming up, seeing the wreckage, the cars tangled within the wreckage. It was a very traumatic experience for both of my parents, and as I grew up, it became an extremely traumatic experience for me as well. It was come to find out there was family members of my father's that had died during the bridge collapse. That was on the bridge, you know, behind him, and that never made it off.
How has this affected your life?
Well, it's affected my life in several ways. One, I will not stop to hesitate anybody, no matter what the danger of the situation is. If it's going through frozen ice, if it's climbing a tower, it doesn't matter. It made me to where want to help anybody that seems to be in any sort of danger for their life. It also, I believe that it made me a better person throughout my life due to this tragedy, because a tragedy of this sort in a town like this brings everybody closer together, no matter what your age.
So what's your vocation?
Vocation.
Your job?
I am an automobile mechanic.
Okay. I wasn't sure you had a fire department hat on.
Yeah. It's yeah. This has been since 2001.
Okay. So you're a volunteer fireman?
Yes.
Okay.
Did your dad have any stories from in the hospital of people going in or out?
No, not of other individuals. I was going in and out of the Hoge Hospital and God Plus. His stories was those that was tangled within the wreckage that he couldn't free, and those that he watched go under several times that he couldn't reach, where they were too far out in the river and within the wreckage of the steel. And I remember my father having nightmares for 8, maybe 10 years after that. I mean, it was a very traumatic experience for my dad, because I mean, he went in to help and couldn't save one life, and it really tore him up.
Did it give you pause about going over bridges since then, or not?
It did as I was young. As I grew older, of course, the more modern engineering of the bridges kind of brings back, you know, a little more security of that. But up until I was about 10 years old, I was scared to cross any bridge, especially whenever they built what was called the Shadle Bridge here in Henderson, which has now been torn down and replaced. I would not cross that bridge. I would literally stay home while my parents came to West Virginia to visit their family, because I was just too scared.
What was your parents' names?
My father's name was Samuel Leighton Bennett, and my mother, Irene Elizabeth Bennett. Patrick was her maiden name.
Okay.
Both were residents of Mason County and had been, along with their family, for many years.
Is there any other stories you can think of that you'd like to pass on?
About the bridge, no. There are stories of folklore that hits this town very strongly concerning the Mothman. A lot of people said that they seen him on top of the bridge. I don't know whether I believe those or not. My fiance's mother, as a matter of fact, was Linda Norman, the first one to report seeing this supposed Mothman, and she also stated that she seen him on top of the bridge before the collapse. But once again, I can't verify or not verify that. That's which she passed a couple years ago.